Hello everyone, Professor Franz here. Today we will talk about negative externality from consumption, also known as demerit goods. For example, cigarette smoking affects not only the smoker but also bystanders through secondhand smoke and higher public health costs. Driving under influence, distracted driving, or speeding puts others at risk. These behaviors can cause pedestrian injuries, traffic jams from accidents, and damage to roads, houses, or trees. Firearms, when used improperly, can also be considered a demerit good. For example, if loaded firearms are stored carelessly, such as in a car glove box or in an unlocked drawer, children may find them and accidentally injure or kill themselves, their playmates, or family members. In addition, the United States experiences frequent mass shootings, which impose significant social costs beyond the individuals directly involved. You see the similarity of cars and firearms. When used improperly, they can both cause danger to bystanders. In economics, we study demerit goods because market alone often produce too much of these activities or goods, leading to deadweight loss. When we analyze externalities, it is important to distinguish between two demand curves. The private demand curve, labeled DP, reflects the value of the good or service to the consumer only. This is a demand curve we normally see in a free market. The social demand curve, labeled DS, reflects the value of the good or service to the entire society, including both the consumer and any bystanders affected by that consumption. Here is a private demand curve DP, which reflects the value of the consumption to the consumer only. Subtracting the cost imposed on bystanders, we get a social demand curve DS. Due to the negative externality from consumption, the social demand curve DS lies below the private demand curve DP. Now let's add our supply curve. When considering how much demerit goods to consume, the consumer looks at their private demand curve, DP. Why? Because consumers ignore external costs to bystanders. If we let the market be, then the equilibrium quantity will be the intersection of the private demand curve DP and the supply curve S, resulting in quantity QE, where E stands for equilibrium. But what is a socially optimal quantity? It can be found at the intersection of the social demand curve DS and the supply curve. The socially optimal quantity is QO, where O stands for optimum. So why do we look at the social demand curve DS to find the socially optimal quantity? Because the social demand curve incorporates both the value to the consumer and the cost to bystanders. Therefore, the social demand curve reflects the total benefit to the entire society, which is lower than the private demand curve due to the external costs ignored by the consumer. As our equilibrium quantity is higher than the optimal quantity, deadweight loss occurs. The shaded triangle is the deadweight loss. Recall with the chapter of market efficiency, where deadweight loss occurs with overproduction. This is exactly what happens with demerit goods. One challenge is this. We see two triangles. So which one is the deadweight loss? Here's the tip. We will focus on the social demand curve because it reflects the benefit to the entire society. Therefore, we will erase the private demand curve to focus on the social demand curve. Once we erase the private demand curve, you see only one triangle. That is the deadweight loss. What are some policies to reduce the deadweight loss? If we could shift the private demand curve DP to the left where it coincides with the social demand curve DS, we can get rid of the deadweight loss. Unfortunately, policies that reduce the deadweight loss from demerit goods also hurt the revenue of the firms that produce or sell these demerit goods. These firms typically use political muscle to oppose these policies. If the demand curve remains at DP, the private demand curve, then the equilibrium price and quantity will be PE and QE respectively. This will result in revenue of PE times QE, which is the orange rectangle. However, If the demand curve shifts to the left to DS, the social demand curve, then the equilibrium price and quantity will be PO and QO, resulting a smaller revenue, which is PO times QO, the red rectangle. Although this outcome is efficient for the market and reduces deadweight loss, it also reduces the revenue and therefore the profits of demerit good manufacturers and producers. As a result, these producers tend to oppose such policies. How do they do this? They often form interest groups to oppose policies that reduce deadweight loss through litigation or lobbying the Congress, frequently framing their opposition in terms of constitutional rights. A real-world example of this occurred in 2012, when 5 tobacco companies used the First Amendment to oppose FDA's proposed graphic warning labels. They argued that the requirement violated their constitutional right to free speech. From an economic perspective, the underlying incentive is clear. Graphic warnings reduce tobacco consumption, which lowers sales and profits. Opposing the policy was a way to protect profits. So it really is not the First Amendment they care about. They care about their profit. There are many ways to make firearms safe without banning ownership, such as safety trainings, licensing tests, registration requirements, and gun safes for families with children. These measures are designed to reduce accidents and unintended harm. However, all these policies can reduce sales for the firearm industry, which means lower profits. As a result, these policies face strong opposition. The National Rifle Association, or NRA, acts as an interest group for firearm producers. To oppose safety regulations, the NRA often frames these policies as a violation of the Second Amendment, using messages like, "The government is taking away your guns." From an economic perspective, this framing helps protect industry profits by resisting regulations that promote safety. As of 2026, 29 states allow individuals to carry concealed firearms in public without a state-issued license or safety training. Can you imagine being allowed to drive a car without any training or license? In the past, cars had very few safety features. No seatbelts, no airbags, and no automatic braking, and glasses were easily shattered. Even a small accident could be deadly. When people asked manufacturers to make cars safer, companies often responded, "Cars don't kill people, drivers do." From an economic perspective, these responses make sense. Adding safety features increase production costs and can reduce profits. This example shows how economic incentives influence business decisions even when safety is at stake. Policies that reduce deadweight loss are often difficult to implement because the benefits are spread across many people, while the costs are concentrated on a small group, such as producers. Those who bear the cost have strong incentives to oppose the policy, even if it improves overall economic efficiency. Because politicians often rely on lobbying funds to win elections, they tend to side with business interest groups. As a result, policies that will reduce deadweight loss from demerit goods are often not adopted. So there you have it. This is not a story about left or right. This is a story about profit maximization. Rent-seeking occurs when firms try to increase their profits by influencing government policy, rather than by producing goods and services more efficiently. Instead of creating new value, rent-seeking redistributes existing surplus and often leads to inefficient market outcome and deadweight loss. In 2023, the healthcare industry, including pharmaceutical companies, hospitals, and professional associations, spent about $739 million on lobbying. The purpose of the spending is to encourage Congress to pass laws that benefit the industry. Why is the healthcare industry willing to spend $739 million on lobbying? Because they will make more money from patients as a result of favorable laws. This concludes our discussion of negative externality from consumption. I hope this helps, and I'll see you next time.